Deep underground, brave explorers risk their lives every year to discover Earth's hidden caves. In the mountains of Russia sits a cave unlike any other, the Veryovkina Cave. This massive hole drops straight down for 1.3 miles, making it the deepest cave anyone has ever found. In late 2020, one man decided to explore it alone. His decision would lead to one of the saddest stories in cave exploring history. This is the fatal story of Sergey KV. He was 37 years old with a wife and children at home. His love for this deep cave would turn into a mystery that lasted 9 long months, breaking his family's hearts and shocking cave explorers around the world. Sergey lived in Sochi, Russia. He loved outdoor adventures, running marathons, and climbing mountains, but he knew almost nothing about exploring caves. He'd only been in 2 caves before this. The morning he left home, he didn't tell his family where he was really going. He just said he was going to find the meaning of life and would come back in a week. The Veryovkina Cave was dangerous even for experts. Just 2 years before, 8 professional cave explorers and a photographer from National Geographic almost died there when a huge flood of water trapped them inside. But something about this record-breaking cave pulled Sergey in. He spent almost a year secretly learning everything he could about it, collecting maps and planning out what would be his last adventure. On November 1st, 2020, with just some basic gear and a brave heart, Sergey started climbing down into one of the world's most dangerous caves. He would never come back out. Deep underground, in one of Earth's most dangerous places, lies a cave so immense it takes professional teams 4 full days just to reach the bottom. The Veryovkina Cave stretches an incredible 1.3 miles straight down into the earth, making it the deepest cave known in the world. The Veryovkina Cave isn't just deep, it's a monster of complexity. At the bottom, it spreads out into a maze-like system of tunnels and water-filled passages called sumps that stretch for another half a mile. The cave is so challenging that even professional cave explorers, the Veryovkina team from Russia, had to set up permanent camps inside it. These camps weren't a luxury. They were absolute necessities for survival during the multi-day journey to the bottom. Just how dangerous is this cave? In 2018, it nearly claimed the lives of 8 professional cavers and a National Geographic photographer named Robbie Schoen. They were camping in the cave's lowest section when disaster struck. A massive flood of water, sounding like a freight train, began pouring through the cave. At first, they weren't too worried. They thought that the water would drain through the cave's lower levels. But then they heard gurgling behind their tent. When they looked, they found water gushing from a hole. The lower levels were already full, and the water was rising fast in their chamber. The team had just minutes to grab their most important gear and escape. They had to climb up a narrow vertical shaft while fighting against a raging torrent of water. While the Russian team stayed calm, Robbie Schoen later admitted it was the scariest moment of his life. The worst part, they had to squeeze through a tight spot where water was shooting out like a fire hose. Schoen had to tuck his head down just to breathe while the water hammered his helmet so hard, it felt like it was pushing his head into his shoulders. They made it to the next camp up, but were trapped there for 16 hours waiting for the flood to go down. If they hadn't escaped when they did, they would have drowned in the completely flooded lower level. This near-death experience didn't scare away Sergey KV. Instead, it seemed to fascinate him. For almost a year, he collected everything he could find about the cave: maps, pictures, screenshots on his phone, and stories from previous expeditions. He was an adventurous person who enjoyed hiking, climbing, and running marathons. But caving, he'd only done it twice before. Sergey drove several hours from his home in Sochi, Russia, to the cave. He had to hike up a mountain just to reach the entrance. Using new climbing crampons and trekking poles to help him get there, at the entrance, he did something that showed he at least understood some basic caving safety. He moved his equipment and food from a regular backpack into waterproof bags. He knew that there would be wet passages and flowing water inside, but critically, he made a huge mistake. He didn't bring any waterproof clothes. The map that Sergey carried showed the locations of the main camps set up by the Veryovkina team. He didn't have permission to be in the cave or use their equipment, but he planned to use their camps anyways. His map had notes about specific passages, problem areas, and how long each section should take to cross. This is where the difference between professionals and amateurs becomes clear. The Veryovkina team always went in with extensive preparations, massive amounts of supplies, installed communication systems, and large teams for safety. It took them about 3 to 4 days just to reach the bottom. Sergey, he went in alone with just what he could carry on his back. The first part of Sergey's journey was brutal. Over 1,200 feet of tight, narrow cave passages. Imagine crawling through spaces barely bigger than your body while dragging bags of supplies behind you. He finally reached the first camp at 1,250 feet deep. But here's where he faced something truly intimidating: the Baba Yaga pit. This pit is a straight drop of 500 feet. That's about as tall as a 50-story building. There are no ledges, no stopping points, just straight down. The professional team had left ropes in place that allowed climbers to lower themselves down using friction devices and climb back up using hand ascenders with foot stirrups. Sergey's notes show he thought it would take 6 hours to go from the entrance to the bottom of this pit. He also noted the return trip would take an extra 2 hours. Standing at the edge of this massive drop, Sergey must have felt some doubt. He decided to reorganize his bags and left one with essential items at Camp 1, while the professional team used huge lighting systems so everyone could see each other. Sergey had just one headlamp with limited range. Whether he felt excited or terrified, he started his descent into the pit. After making it down the huge pit, Sergey reached Camp 2 at 2,000 feet deep. The professionals had left some basic supplies there: a tent, gas for heating and cooking, and some non-perishable food like ketchup. What happened next is tragic. Sergey ended up spending about 6 or 7 days at this camp. Why? Because he either forgot or didn't realize he needed foot stirrups to climb back up the 500-foot pit. For almost a week, he probably tried everything he could think of to climb back up. He might have tried climbing the walls around the pit, but the angles and distance made that impossible. Trying to climb the rope using just hand ascenders? That's like trying to do 500 pull-ups in a row while carrying all your gear. Physically impossible. Each day he grew weaker, used up more food, and burned through the camp's gas supply for heat. His options were grim: wait for rescue, but no one knew he was there, or keep going deeper, hoping to find more supplies or equipment. After about 6 days, starving and growing weaker, Sergey made the fatal decision to go to Camp 3, another 1,300 feet deeper. The journey to Camp 3, at 3,300 feet, would have been challenging even for someone in peak condition. The professional team could make this descent in about 4 hours, but for Sergey, weak, hungry, and alone, it must have been an enormous struggle. He did make it to Camp 3, however, but found no salvation there. No food, no useful supplies, and nothing that could help him survive or climb out. The conditions at this depth were horrific. Water was everywhere, sometimes a spray, sometimes a waterfall. With 100% humidity, nothing could dry out. Remember those cotton overalls he was wearing? In the cave's 40-degree Fahrenheit, that's 4 degrees Celsius temperature, wet cotton is a recipe for hypothermia. Without the gas heaters from the upper camps, Sergey had to keep moving just to generate body heat. But he had no food or energy, and hypothermia was setting in. Despite everything, Sergey decided to go even deeper. He knew from his map that another camp was about 1,000 feet below. Maybe, just maybe, he would find what he needed there. He gathered his remaining strength and began lowering himself down again. What happened in the next 300 feet remains a mystery. Most experts believe that Sergey succumbed to hypothermia, wet cotton clothes, cold temperatures, no food, exhaustion. It was a deadly combination. Others think that he may have fallen in this weakened state. While he wore a helmet to protect his head, his overall situation was simply impossible to survive. Back home, his wife grew worried when he didn't return after a week. She alerted authorities, but she had no idea where he'd gone caving. The Veryovkina Cave was over 2 hours away from their house, and Sergey hadn't filled any official requests to explore it. 9 months later, in August 2021, the Veryovkina team arrived for a new expedition. They found something unusual at the entrance: a rope hanging over the ledge, which was against all protocols. As they descended, they found more evidence: trekking poles, crampons, and a cloth backpack. At the first camp, they found signs someone had stayed there: missing food empty packages, and used supplies. At 3,600 feet deep, they made the grim discovery. Sergey's body was hanging from their ropes, folded to the side, still attached to his ascenders. Below him were 2 plastic caving bags. He had 2 cell phones and a multi-tool knife with him. The team could immediately see how unprepared he'd been. Improper clothing, no backup equipment, and crucially, no foot stirrups for climbing. Recovering Sergey's body presented another challenge. The same features that made the cave so dangerous, tight squeezes, curving tunnels, long rope climbs, made it impossible to bring out an intact body. The recovery required over 100 people and difficult decisions about how to transport his remains. Finally, after 9 months of uncertainty, Sergey's wife could lay him to rest. Looking at the evidence, his cell phones, his body position, the supplies he carried, and what he left at various camps, we can piece together most of what happened. While we'll never know his exact final thoughts or moments, we can understand the desperation he must have felt, trapped in Earth's deepest cave, fighting for survival. For 9 long months, his body hung silently in the darkness. The saddest part, this whole tragedy could have been prevented. Sergey's life might have been saved by making different choices. He could have joined a caving club and learned from experts. He could have reached out to the professional teams who knew the cave. He could have double-checked his climbing gear and brought those crucial foot stirrups. He could have even told someone, anyone, where he was going. And most importantly, he never should have gone into such a dangerous cave by himself. You know what makes the story even harder? It didn't need to end this way. Sometimes the difference between an amazing adventure and a terrible accident comes down to simple things. Being prepared, respecting how dangerous nature can be, and knowing when to say, I'm not ready for this yet. Today, people still explore the Veryovkina Cave, but now it holds a powerful message. No underground journey, no matter how exciting, is worth risking your life for. Do you want to hear more incredible stories about cave explorations and amazing survival stories that change the way that we think about adventure? Hit that subscribe button and join us for our next video. We'll take you on another incredible underground journey that left the world speechless. Now don't forget to tap the notification bell so you won't miss it.